By now you know very well that word vectors are the most important and the fundamental one to natural language processing, especially in the machine learning applications, right, especially downstream application that use natural language processing to recover some information or do some kind of a translation and all would require word vectors, correct. If we have a very good set of word vectors for the vocabulary that we have, the downstream application are going to be doing very well. The application are going to be outputting some good and useful output for us, correct. So, in order to have a good output, we need to start from the good fundamental at the bottom of the pyramid, which I am calling it as the word vector space, right. So, that is what we input into the application, either into the neural network or into any other standard non-neural based applications. You also know that natural language applications have not reached the stage of maturity. We are still improving. We are not at a stage where we can say that NLP has reached this stage of 100% with respect to the performance, with respect to the usability and so on. You know well that in the translation we are still at 32%, right. So, for all this we require a good set of word vectors. I keep emphasizing that right from the beginning. So, we have been using various mechanisms to capture the word vectors. The first, you remember we tried with the SVD where we tried to capture the term documents, and then using LSA we try to decompose into 3 different matrices, and then we try to capture the word embedding from the LSA application, right. And then later we moved on to the learning model using neural networks, where we try to input one hot vector as the input for the neural net layer, and then later capture the word embeddings for that word using the context that was available either through the SIBO model or through the skipgram model and so on. So, we have been using those word vectors in all the applications so far. The reason why I am again bringing this up is in order to improve the efficiency of the applications, downstream applications, we require a good set of word vectors, and the research is still going on in this subject. There are 2 ways of doing this. One is using a global model, another one is using a local model. Local model is something that we had seen especially with the SIBO and skipgram model, where we try to capture 7 words or 5 words at a time and then try to predict the central word or predict the context word and so on, right. I am sure you remember all this. And there is another one which is called the global model. It tries to find the co-occurrences of the words and then uses the counts of the co-occurrences, find out the semantics of these words or the meaning of the word, or try to find out the similarity of words and so on. So, now what we are going to be doing is we are going to be looking at again some of the methods which are called as global methods, and then try to see how word vectors can be built and find out whether those word vectors are better than the SIBO model or skipgram model. So, this I think you know well, right. The word vec that we have seen earlier in week 5 or 6, where we try to use the context words as input, especially for the SIBO model, and then try to predict what was the central word, right. Or in the skipgram model we try to input the central word and then try to predict the context words at the output. So, we used these models rather using subsampling, negative sampling and hierarchical softmax to improve the efficiency of identifying the word vectors. I am sure you also know this part. And then we know that it uses the co-occurrences, but it ignores the frequency of co-occurrences of words. So, which is very important, right. So, we want to really identify how many times that particular co-occurrence had occurred in that corpus. That gives the importance of the context words and the central words that we have been talking about in this Seebaugh model and then Kip-Graham model. So, those two models did not utilize the frequency of co-occurrences of words. And then we utilized a small window size which is 5 or 7. So, that is what we call as the local model. So, it is localized, right. So, it does not know anything beyond that 5 words or 7 words. So, every time it sees the similar setup of or rather the same set of 7 words, it still retrains that. So, maybe we can find a mechanism to eliminate the duplicates, but there is no concept of knowing whether that particular set has been trained or not in the Seebaugh model. It continuously takes those 7 words and then keeps training the model. Okay. So, now what we want to do is to find out if these contextual information that we find in the corpus could be used using the count of the co-occurrences of words. You know this very well. I think I used this slide in the beginning of the lecture series, where the context was given as this, right. And then we have several similar words that could be the last word for this sentence. So, I also mentioned that if we have the same context, but there are different kinds of words that we are using as the last word, we know that all these words are similar, right. So, this is how we identified the semantics of the word, trying to understand the meaning of the words and so on using the context that is available. So, there are various approaches that are followed. As I mentioned earlier, LSI is one. I am sure you know about this. I am not going to be discussing this in detail. The second one is HAL. It is hyperspace analog to language. And third one is COLS. It is correlated occurrence analog to lexical semantic. And then the last one which we will talk about is GLOW. Okay. And I am sure you would have heard about this several times during the lecture. I was using some of the GLOW vectors for demonstrating this sentiment analysis, where I used 50 word vectors or 100 word vectors. I am not sure which one I used there, but I utilized a GLOW vectors for identifying the sentiments, right. So, we will talk about that as well, and these are the model that utilize the local context as well as the count, especially the second, third and the fourth one. Okay. So, the first one utilize the term document, the rest of them are going to be using the term document. We will talk about how those term matrix can be formed, and then how we can utilize the co-occurrence counts through that. Okay. So, we are going to be talking about this in brief, all these three in the next few slides. Okay. So, first, before even starting that, we need to figure out whether it is possible to do that in a manual fashion, right. So, only if you are able to do it in a manual fashion, then it is possible for you to find out what type of rules that I have to apply, what should I do to automate this, what can be automated, what cannot be automated. All those things would be known clearly only when we try to do this in the manual fashion. Okay. So, now assume that you have been given the entire dictionary of words, and then there are so many different buckets, let us say about 20,000 buckets, and you have been given about 100,000 words. Okay. What you need to do it, or what you are asked to do is take one word from the dictionary and then place it in one bucket. Okay. And then take another one from the dictionary and then find out if it is similar to what you had just placed, put this word in the same bucket. So, in that way you start filling all the buckets one after the other, and then at the end you will have various buckets which will contain similar words in them, right. So, that is one way of classifying the words and then trying to semantically connect them using the similarity. Right. So, that is one way of doing it for the word vector. So, we can call that particular set of words as a word vector. We still do not know how to really compute the numbers for each of those words. Let us assume that we have some idea with respect to that, and if you put all the words in the vector form, that will constitute one word vector. Supposing if we have about 10,000 buckets, then we have about 10,000 word vectors for us. Okay. That is one way. Okay. For that we require the human judgment, right. So, we can place those words in that fashion, or another approach is, supposing if you are given, let us say the entire Wikipedia dump, and then based on the word you are going to be starting to fill all the buckets. Instead of the dictionary, now replace that with the Wikipedia dump. Every word you start again putting them in one of the buckets, and then start adding similar words in each of those buckets. Okay. So, that way there is a human touch to figure out how to put those similar words in the same bucket. Okay. So, so here what we are saying is, instead of the bucket we are calling it as an axis. So, in each axis you are going to be putting the desirable words. So, you must first choose the axis and find the set of words that must be confined to that chosen axis. Okay. So, here the bucket is our axis. So, for example, you want to have an axis that going to be describing the size, right. So, there is a bucket that is called size. So, what are all things that you will input into that bucket. So, for example, the ant is very small. So, that will also go in there, mountain also would go in there because it is big. So, with respect to that, we are going to be moving those words into the respective axis. So, can we use lexical co-occurrences to construct that semantic space? So, the space that contains those 10,000 buckets or the 10,000 axes, we would call that as our semantic space. So, is it possible to construct high dimensional distributed semantic space using this model? So, if you are able to do this in a manual fashion, let us say using the Wikipedia dump, we should be able to do it to some extent using the automated fashion itself. So, for us what is going to be the helping hand? The helping hand is our context. So, based on the context we are going to be throwing one word after the other into the respective buckets, so that the similar words occupy all those. Okay. So, let us see how that is achieved in HAL first. Okay, in the hyperspace analog to language or HAL, what we are going to be doing is we are going to be taking a content, a huge corpus, and then start looking at 10 words at a time or n words at a time. Okay. So, we will define what that n means little late. So, we are also going to be defining a window. We know how we can create the words within a window, right. So, taking a window of size 3 for a trigram or 5 window size for a 5 gram and so on, right. So, we can slide that 3 gram or n gram across the corpus, and then whatever comes within that window we take it and then start putting it into the model, right. So, that we can later figure out how many times certain words occur together, and then we can make a count of that. So, in this case again we are going to be doing the same operation, but we are going to be having a window of size n. We are going to be having 10 n neighborhood words, right. So, if you create a window of this type, and then assuming that for this word I am going to be finding the neighborhood words, let us say about 10 of them. Okay. So, word 1 is pretty close to the word here, right. Word 2 is little far away, and then 10 is far away from this. So, can we say that words which are closer to WI should get a higher weightage than the one which are further away from here. So, this is the idea that is being followed in the HAL model. So, that is what we call as the ramped window, where the influence of the word that is further away from this word will be minimal when compared to the one which is closer to this. So, how do we define that? Say a very simple idea would be to have an inverse relationship of this type. Okay, let us say that a co-occurrence strength is defined in terms of the inverse relationship. Okay, so, in this case what will happen is the word which is closer to the WI will have, let us say in this case, a value of 10, and then 2 will have the value of 9, 8, 7 and so on. So, in this way we are also saying that those who are closer to the word would be considered as more similar word in that context than the one which are farther away. Okay, so, that is what we say here in this particular bullet point. So, the word WJ1 immediately occurring next to WI will have a higher value than the word WJN separated by a distance of n from it. Okay. The co-occurring word strengths are distance and direction sensitive. So, in this case what these authors also have done is, instead of just taking the or finding the co-occurrence in this direction, for this word also find the co-occurrence in the opposite direction. So, every word you will see there is a forward and a backward co-occurrence count. Okay. So, that is what we call it as. It is not only dependent on the distance, it is also direction sensitive. The term matrix is constructed with every cell representing a summed co-occurrence count for a single word pair. So, when you do that, you start counting how many times certain words occur in that context. If this occurred in the forward as well as in the backward direction, then you start summing that up. Okay. So, we will see through an example how that could be done. If the words have similar values in the same dimension, they will be closer together in space, meaning that they share similar context. You got it, right. So, if the words have similar values in the same direction, okay, supposing we have found some value for word I, and then we have done the same thing for another, let us say word I plus 10, right. And then if the values that are found for this WI plus 10 and WI, if they are similar, then we can say these two words are similar. That means, we are just looking at the counts and then say how similar are these counts for these two words. So, we try to use a normalized distance measure to find the similarity in this case. Okay. The word vectors closest to a given word are considered as its number. This I think you know very well. So, I do not have to explain this. Alright. So, let us take one small example and then see how this could be computed. So, the idea is to compute the count of the co-occurrences in both directions. Okay. So, we are going to be taking this sentence along with the period at the end and then start counting how many times or start counting the strength of the co-occurrences for each of the words. Let us start with the word periods. Let us start from this direction. Okay. So, for this one the window is going to be 5. Okay. So, we are going to have 5 because which is closer to the period, barn is little away. So, if you look at the period and then start looking at the barn has the value of 4, right. And then if you look at the fell, it is pretty close to this, it is next word. So, the value is 5, and then horse is far away because it is not within that window of 5. So, it gets the value 0. Then past is at the past will get this strength 2 and raised will get the strength 1, right, and then the will get 3 because it is the third word from the period. Okay. So, this is if you look at this one, it is coming from the backward direction. Okay. So, the rows are filled for the words that are coming in the reverse direction. So, if you take fell, so this is 5, 4, 3, 2 and 1. Okay, you got it. So, in this way you can fill this table from the left from the right to left for the rows, and then for the columns, if you want to fill the columns, what you do is you start filling it from left to right. So, what do you do? So, in this case now we start from for this word 1. Okay. So, let us look at this for the column. So, let us for the word the we have to start looking at horse is at 5. Okay. So, 5 here, and then raised is 4, past is 3, the is 2, and then born is 6. How is this 6 coming? The 6 is coming first, when you do from the left to right, we get the value of 1 here, right, and then for the word if you consider this one, and then we have 5, 4, and then for period we have 3. So, add the count of 5 to that. So, it gets the value of 6. Okay. So, when you do from the left to right, there is a value for it, and then when you do from right to left, you get some co-occurrence values, and then you do from left to right, you get the co-occurrence values. And if you find more than once, for example, born had occurred twice for the word the, this is the first time, and then this is the second time, right. So, we are able to get the value of 6 in that fashion. So, in this way you fill the whole table, and the table is not going to be a symmetric table, right, because the counts are different from both directions. Okay. And then in order for us to do this, the authors are advising that we need to consider a conversational text. So, only if you have this type of text, it is possible for you to have all kinds of mixtures in terms of the context and so on, then it is possible to have a good set of word vectors. They prove it by looking at various corpus, and then proving that the one that they have gotten from the Usenet is lot better than anything else. So, they have considered for experiment 1 160 million words from Usenet news groups, and then they have taken the window size of 10. So, earlier I have taken the window size of 5. In this case, they have taken the window size of 10, and then the word appearing with a frequency of 50 or more is considered as the vocabulary, otherwise you would discard them, right. So, you do not want to have a noisy or a very large matrix to deal with. So, you discard some of the words from the mat, and then they have selected 20 target words at random from the frequency of word using the Zipf law. You know what this, right? I am sure you would remember this, right. So, they are using the Zipf law to eliminate the high frequency ones and the low frequency ones, and then consider only the middle frequency words, and then try to find out the word vectors to figure out whether they are really getting a good set of word vectors. So, what they are doing is they take a target word and then using a normalized Euclidean distance, I am sure you remember this too, they compute the distance between those two words. If they are small, then those two words are similar. Okay. So, we will see that in the table in the next slide. The relationships appear to be both semantic and associative. High dimensional neighborhood surrounding each word is similar to a semantic field. So, I think we spoke about that earlier as well. Okay, so, taking an example, like what we mentioned earlier, they are using the zip law to pick up only those middle frequency words to find out whether they are able to get the words which are very similar. Okay. So, let us look at the table here, and then these are the target words, okay. And then they try to find out the 5 nearest neighbors for the target words. Okay, they found juice as one of the neighbors, and then butter, vinegar, bottles and cans. Somewhat okay, I guess, right. And then if you look at the names of the series, okay, you have Leningrad, Rome, there is a country here, and then Dresden, Azerbaijan and Tibet, another country around here. And then look at the lipstick, the similar words are lace, pink, cream, purple and soft. And then let us look at this one, cardboard here. The similar words are found to be plastic, rubber, glass, thin and tiny. Okay. So, without getting into the complexity of any of the SIBO model or skipgram model, just using the count of the co-occurrence words in both direction, they are able to show that it is possible to build such word vectors, high dimensional word vectors using some of the simplest of the ideas. Okay. So, another way they wanted to demonstrate was to use some kind of gray level values for each of the word vectors and then show that how similar they are. So, in this case if you look at the road and street. Okay. So, the word vectors which they have obtained for road has been converted into gray levels and presented as squares here. So, if you see road and street, they are somewhat similar. I would not say that they are 100% right, but they are definitely closer. And then if you look at the words coffee and tea, you can find the similarity again in this fashion. Okay. In another experiment, what they did was they took some body parts, pets and locations as the keywords and then tried to see if those words are within a certain axis or within certain boxes. So, they try to plot them in this fashion. If you look at this one, here you have the pets and then you have the body parts around here and then locations around here. So, within that axis that they have defined, they are able to bring in bull, turtle, lion, cat, cow, dog, a tooth, interesting, kitten, puppy, mouse and oyster as part of that axis. And then the body parts again are classified according to the similarity values. Okay. So, in my view, I think this is a good example of how you can really utilize the co-occurrences values and build a word vector in the simplest of the way, right. So, there is no complexity involved in this. This is a very simple automated way where you just start using a sliding window which is also a ramped one, and then start counting the number of occurrences of the co-occurring words, and then finally create a word vector and so on. Okay. So, in this case there are two kinds of word vectors, right. So, one is as you saw earlier. So, there is a word vector around here, right. So, these are also word vectors. Okay. So, what I am going to do is I am not going to tell you which one they have considered. So, I am going to ask you to go and then read this paper. And then find out, so what is the word vector that they are talking about towards the end. Okay. So, at the end of the day you need to have a word vector, and which one they have taken, or did they combine it in some fashion or so on. So, you need to go and then read this paper and then figure out what mechanism they have used. The paper is very easy to read, there is no complexity involved in this paper. Okay. So, I want you to go and then read that thoroughly to find out the answer for this question. Okay. So, if you look at the HAL, right, it actually captures information about word meanings through unsupervised analysis of text. We are not really training the system to say that okay, this word is closer, it should be closer to this and so on, like what we have done in the CBOW model, right. So, we are not reinforcing that. It is just a very simple unsupervised analysis of content. The word vectors are really meaningful. Okay. So, they are showing similar words in some fashion or not. Okay. So, based earlier, right. So, they initially thought that the vectors are going to be, word vectors are going to be semantics as well as associative in nature, and then based on the experiment they found that it is not, they are more semantic than associative in nature. HAL acquires word meanings as a function of keeping track of how words are used in the context, correct. So, based on the counting mechanism of the co-occurrences of words, we are able to find out the meanings of the word. The term-term co-occurrence matrix carries the history of the contextual experience by using a moving window and weighting of the co-occurring words based on the distance. So, this is the mechanism used to obtain the strength of the co-occurrence. Again, like any other neural net model, it exploits the regularity of the language, so that we are able to capture the word vectors in the right fashion. You do not require very complex mechanism to really capture word vectors. Mechanisms of this type would really do a good job in terms of capturing the word vectors. Is this better than CBOW model or skipgram model? Supervised models are definitely better, okay, because we keep reinforcing to the network saying that hey, learn this because this is related to this. So, we are making the system learn the relationship, whereas in this case we are not doing any of this, it is just an unsupervised analysis. So, in terms of the performance, this would be little lower than the supervised models. So, can we make this better? Is it possible for you to get into another supervised or rather unsupervised model which can do better than this and pretty close to skipgram model or CBOW model?